Day, an SOS for survival. Here in New York is Frank Reynolds.
Good evening. On this Earth Day, millions of Americans in the communities which dot this map have taken the first step to survival. But if this day of teach-ins, mock funerals, rallies, marches, speeches, and songs does not convince enough of us that the threat to our life on Earth is clear and present, then we may have cast a vote for death. At stake now is every man's fate, whether his air will be pure, symbolized by the white stripes, whether his land will be unspoiled, symbolized by the green stripes.
So, hi everyone, I'm here with Serena Farb, aka Born Vegan, and 53 years later, and we are closer to extinction than ever. And we're going to talk about the one component and the one flag that was missing, the vegan flag, and why it's so important for people to go vegan. Thank you for being here, Serena. I'm going to play another clip. Let's go back a little bit more in history.
It's tremendously encouraging to see all across this country the remarkable interest on the campuses and off the campuses on an issue which is not only just an issue of survival, but an issue of how we survive.
Switching to Dennis says his goal for that first Earth Day was to unify all the different movements, like wildlife, pollution, and pesticides.
At least my objective in Earth Day was to tie them all together, to weave them into the fabric of environmentalism, and to convince all of these targeted groups that if we all came together, recognized we were operating from the same set of values, we'd be much more powerful working together on our issues than with that laser focus that they've been bringing to them.
When the day came.
So Rita, I think that point is so important, and I'd love you to comment on it. Coming together, all the groups and the power behind that. You're coming together with the first vegan Earth Day March, and I'd like you to talk about that. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for showing those clips and having me on. The Vegan Earth Day March is, I was really inspired by the 2019 youth climate strikes that were going on. And, like Greta Thunberg and the energy and all of these students. I was actually teaching high school at that time when they were going on and helped some of my students participate. But I noticed that there was, of course, a big issue missing, which was very few people were talking about the role that animal agriculture plays in, climate issues, environmental issues, pollution, like all major environmental issues have, most of them have a connection to animal agriculture. It's one of our biggest root causes. And yet you go to most Earth Day events and climate strikes, and not only do so few environmental groups and people talk about them, but there's still a lot of things where they're having fundraisers or events that are actively promoting or using animal agriculture, meat and dairy at their events. So not only are they not addressing it, and many times they're actually still facilitating and helping cause some of the issues that they're saying they're out there, marching for. And so that's what really motivated me back in 2019 to kind of do something that took that energy and momentum from the youth climate strikes and climate marches and really address the issue of animal agriculture. And I saw that, and this is with a lot of environmental issues, I say, I think sometimes people jump in and get burned out when there aren't clear end goals or demands. So people are just like, governments need to take action. Governments need to take action. Well, great. What is it you actually want them to do? Like, what do we actually need to do to stop climate change, to stop pollution, to stop these environmental issues? And, I think one of the biggest things we can do as individuals and as governments and a society is to stop contributing to animal agriculture and take action.
Let's show another
planet is currently facing a climate change crisis as a result of greenhouse gas emissions and the warming they create. Gases like carbon dioxide are emitted when fuels are burned, but are absorbed back into the environment. Synthesis. Too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere acts like a blanket, keeping the Earth's heat.
So no one really realized how significant the methane gases were until Dr. Rao started to do some work on it. And as you were, not only are the people that are working on the climate crisis contributing, they're also telling vegans to be quiet in some cases. In fact, this next clip, let me play this next clip and I'll explain.
I've been working on veganism as the primary solution to climate change for a long time. And just recently, Jane Willis-Mitchell told me, she was frustrated because Jane Fonda told her to stop talking or be quiet because she was mentioning animal agriculture. And so she said, we need a white paper. We need something. Actually, she said, we need a report that says, this is the number one reason for climate change. And I said, well, I've studied that and maybe it's time for me to write something up. And so that's what I decided to do.
That's super interesting because for those that don't know, Jane Fonda is very much a environmental activist, and she has been getting arrested once a week, every week. I think we're on 3 or 4 weeks now. And so she's saying, be quiet about animal agriculture. Does she think it's something that's going to confuse the message? Does she just not believe it? What do you think the reasoning is there?
I have no idea what the reasoning is, but that's what Jane Willis-Mitchell told me. And so that prompted me to look into writing this white paper. And, because I knew that the IPCC was slanting the data. Yeah. I mean, the data is there. It's just how do you present it, right?
Wow, there's so much to unpack there. But first, I want to say that we love Jane Fonda, invite her on at any time. But I actually was observing that march, and it was right around the time of COVID, so it was on Zoom as well. And I heard Jane Fonda say, be quiet, when Jane Willis-Mitchell was putting up a vegan signs, and the vegans, I saw it with my own eyes, the vegans were standing behind and being kind of pushed away. So that's exactly the point you were making. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more? And then we'll go on to another clip where Dr. Rao shows the solution.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all too common. I've been in so many rooms throughout college and then beyond where I would be talking with environmental activists, and they would actively be serving, whether it was milk or things that had cow's milk and eggs in them, or beef, even like at environmental events. And anytime I'd bring it up or say it's one thing to not talk about it, it's another thing to actively be undermining and contributing to this, I would be told to, be quiet or don't bring that up or don't blame individuals. It's the system, it's the corporations, focus on that. And it's just, I think the biggest issue there is we absolutely need to hold corporations and big companies accountable for the environmental damage they're causing. But, my personal opinion is that's a little hypocritical if we're going to sit there and say corporations and these rich people need to change, but I still want to keep eating a beef burger. I don't want to make a change to my own diet or my own lifestyle. It's I'm sure that's how the CEO is. They're I don't want to give up my money to help the environment. So, we all have to take some personal responsibility and be willing to choose plant-based alternatives.
Absolutely. I want to play a couple of more clips for people that are not as familiar with the issue and how veganism is so important in plant-based diet to global warming. I want to play a couple more.
So, it's a pattern I've seen before. There's a reason that neither of Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth documentaries have it in there. I think he's getting a little bit better about talking about it now, but he was sort of talking about it like, it's too inconvenient. People don't want to hear it at all. Let's at least get them on board with the environmental stuff instead of triggering them really hard and then scaring them away from environmentalism. Right. Maybe that's Jane Fonda's idea. I haven't heard about this, so I'll look into it. But let's get into the paper a little bit, because I think it's super interesting, because that first line, I was just super shocked. It said 87% of basically climate change is caused by animal agriculture, human-driven climate change. So do you want to unpack that and why it might be different than the FAO's 14.5% or 18%, depending on which report?
Well, the FAO had 14.5% and 18%.
And we're going to go into that clip in a moment. I just think it's so interesting, because I want people to know right now that you're in a library and you are traveling around. You're doing the vegan van tour. And we're going to talk about the Vegan Earth Day in just a moment. I want to make sure we save time for that. But I think it's important that people get to see how Dr. Rao gets to that 87%. So let's watch this video, and then we're going to talk about the event.
Animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change. But the Climate Healers White Paper goes a lot further. It's an eye-opening review of farmed animals and climate, and this is a story I think you'll find truly surprising. Firstly, vegetation has far more power over climate than we might think. Each year, the amount of carbon dioxide exchanged between the vegetation and the atmosphere is 10 times more than fossil fuel emissions. So Rao saw this as an engineering problem, to look for ways to tweak that natural carbon cycle, bump up the carbon drawdown in that natural cycle by 10%, and the climate is fixed. So looking at forests, he discovered that deforestation going back 10,000 years has actually released more carbon dioxide than all fossil fuel emissions. I bet you haven't come across that before, deforestation emissions more than fossil fuels. And those deforested areas we use for agriculture are kept in a state of extremely low carbon. So how do we reverse this and restock these lands with carbon? Yes, there are methods to increase soil carbon, but we need a large-scale climate solution, and we need it in a hurry. That brings us to rewilding. Given half a chance, nature will bounce back strongly. This is a rewilded area of Scotland. Scotland was originally called Caledonia, a name that means forest. But most of Scotland is now like this, and sheep in particular make sure that no trees grow back on this country. Animal agriculture.
Sorry, that just goes to prove that the problem is fixable. And the reason, I don't know if we went further into this, but the reason you're in a library is because you're traveling, you're doing your vegan van tour, and you are sort of living off the grid. Do you want to just talk a little bit about how you made that decision and how it ties into your work, the work you do in veganism and being a public speaker, etc.?
Yeah, so I mean, vegan education has been a real passion of mine for a long time. And in 2020, I quit my job teaching high school chemistry and environmental science to do vegan education full time. And that started with some online content creation. And then due to a number of factors with my apartment and where I wanted to live and wanting to travel abroad and just a bunch of different things, I had a friend who was selling her already converted camper van that had, solar panels installed on it and a bed and all of these things. And so I ended up buying it from her. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to, try living and traveling in this, one of the things I talk to people about when I'm doing vegan education is the idea that we are all walking billboards. We are all living examples of the kind of future and world we want to be. And that's actually one of the most powerful and simplest forms of activism that we can all do, even if we aren't comfortable going out and, protesting or doing things that are a little more, out there sometimes. Even things as simple as eating a delicious vegan meal at, the lunch table in front of, high school students we teach, or people, our coworkers, even things as simple as that. Setting that example is so powerful. So I have a water bottle here that's covered in stickers. I take this with me to the gym and everywhere I go. wearing t-shirts that have vegan messages on them. So basically, this is the way I already sort of, live my life. And I was like, well, if I have this van, and it was plain white at the time, I thought, why not take the idea of a walking billboard, as far as I really can. And so I designed, a whole design for it, a vinyl wrap, and covered it in educational information, so that wherever I go and whatever I'm doing, I'm being that driving billboard. So when I'm driving hours across the country for a speaking engagement or to do activism along the way, everyone sees this information, whether it's, encouraging people to think about the individuals that we think that they often think of as objects, to actually think about them as individuals instead of, objects and property, or considering the facts about climate change and animal agriculture. All of that information is there on my van, and I have a scannable QR code. So if anybody has more questions, they get directed to my website where they can learn more.
That's amazing. And we're going to be putting up over time. I just was putting up ways people can contact you. But I do want to jump in and say, if anyone experienced a blank screen in the beginning of the broadcast, one of the viewers alerted me, and if you just go off and come back on, I don't think they'd be there that long, but if that does happen for some strange reason, please come back on. So one of the things we do want to get into now, because the time is moving along, is the actual what you are, in addition to living it, which you absolutely do. And I have a few more videos to show on that. But I want to talk about what you're doing collectively with others to make a change. So let's talk a little bit about the event. And you are co-organizing it with Chelsea Davis, who is another activist. She does a lot of video shows and podcasts, etc. So another person that is living the actual lifestyle and message of veganism. And so tell us a little bit about the event. We want to make sure people know it's on April 22nd.
Yeah, so it's the Vegan Earth Day March, exactly as it sounds, and it will be taking place on Earth Day. And we're kind of taking the idea of both Earth Day and the climate strikes and combining them and saying, we need to make animal agriculture one of the front and center issues, and we need to make transitioning our food system to a plant-based food system with, the plant-based treaty, which some people may be familiar with. We need to center all of that in the environmental and climate conversations. And we need to have some clear sort of demands and things that we're calling for as well.
Can you go into detail a little bit more about those?
Yes. So our mission, as you were putting up there, is basically we want to create we want to transform our food system and heal the planet and our relationship with the planet and other animals to create a vegan paradigm, with a veganic food system that normalizes like peace and justice for all beings. And, we want to specifically with this march, generate awareness, empower people to get involved and build a larger active grassroots community, and then use that power that we're building to show policymakers and elected officials that we mean business. And so our demands then are, we kind of have threefold. The individual demand, which is the individuals that can, need to take action on their own to do their best to boycott the meat and dairy industries and companies. And then, we also recognize that there are huge systemic factors such as subsidies and bailouts that our tax dollars with the government are paying for that are artificially propping up the meat and dairy industry, making those products unfairly, cheaper than plant-based alternatives. It's a very rigged system. And so we want policymakers and government officials to vote and take action to stop those things as well.
I just want to jump in here because we're halfway through our time, a little more than that, and mention your sponsors that you have right now, but you're also, I'm sure, looking for more sponsors or people to get involved. I also want to go ahead and show the locations, and maybe you could talk for a moment about some of the cities that you're going to be having the marches in and how people can get involved. I'll bring up the website again.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're partnering with Plant-Based Treaty and the Animal Save movement in particular, who already have a lot of chapters around the world. So we're working a lot with like Climate Save and Animal Save chapters. But right now we have, and I'm not going to remember all of them, but we have marches being planned for New York City, LA, San Francisco, Tel Aviv, Israel, and then a couple cities in, I think we've got a city in Nigeria, 1 or 2 in Kenya, and then Mexico City, Chile, and some other South American countries. And then, Porto, Portugal. We've got a pretty big march being planned there, and a number of other cities in the US as well, and many more. I think there's close to, we have 20 to 30 cities listed on the map right now, and we're adding a lot more and will be in the next few weeks.
Yes, and you mentioned that you want to get up to, your goal was 50 cities. I do want to mention that here in LA there will be a march, and what I wanted to say was Paige Parsons Roach, who is one of our contributors, Plant-Based in the Burbs. She does a show on Unchained TV, which if you haven't downloaded, by the way, please do so, unchainedtv.com or watch.unchainedtv.com for this program. It will be there, and you can share it with your friends and spread the word, because we absolutely want to get as many people as possible on April 22nd for the march, and to help raise awareness, help Serena and Chelsea and all the others that are taking part in this march. And again, we want to encourage people to do so. I would like, before we run out of time completely, for you to talk a little bit about how you live off the grid and what it's like, and some of the projects you've done, and how we'll go back over how people get in touch with you.
Thank you. Yeah. So the converted camper van that I'm currently living in has solar panels on the roof that power the inside. So it is a gas powered van, unfortunately, but it has solar panels that power an inside electric circuit that I can use to plug, a fan in, charge my phone, and cook. So my van is very tiny in the scheme of camper vans. So I pretty much have an Instant Pot for a kitchen. I don't have a fridge or anything like that. I don't have running water, but I have an Instant Pot that plugs in and is powered by my solar panels. So I pretty much eat, when I'm living in the van, one pot, simple, beans and rice and veggies type of, meals that I can easily cook in there. But yeah, my lights and everything are all powered by that. And then
I actually have a little clip before you go further and give us some more information. Let's watch you cook in the van. What always strikes me when I see that is you're actually not cooking the beans and a lot of the foods that you're eating, but it's the spices you're putting on. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, they make everything. And I have, if you saw, that whole spice rack in my van, which I think, a lot of people find really funny. Like, I have minimal space, and then how do I choose to use my space? Yes, I have a whole spice rack, and the tubs under my bed. I literally carry a whole pantry with me. A very large portion of my storage is for food, so that I don't have to, I still have to shop more frequently than I would if I had a fridge and, like a kitchen and things like that. But I can carry canned beans and pastas and things like that with me, so that when I'm at a park or camping, out in a rural area, I have what I need with me to make stuff. And I think the key is really those spices and sauces. So, you can make a completely different dish with beans and rice and veggies, whether you're using salsa or, curry powder and cumin and some Indian spices, or chili powder and, more Mexican spices, or, balsamic vinegar for a more, vinegary or Italian or pasta. And so I use the same basic beans and rice and then whatever veggies I have on hand. And then I'm switching it up with my flavors and nutritional yeast. That's one of my, of course, go-tos. And
Yeah, I want to just go on and talk a little bit more about your lectures. I don't want to leave that out before we wrap up. So, and you did something at the college that you attended. There was a rather unique event with TEDx that you were able to participate in, or please correct me on that if I don't have it quite right.
Yeah. So I was invited to give a TEDx speech at my alma mater. They host a TEDx event. And so that was just recently, and the topic they chose for their event was food for thought. So they invited me back, and the video is not online yet, but hopefully it will be soon. And I spoke about veganism in a rural college in Iowa that definitely does not not always put veganism front and center. Is surrounded by a lot of CAFOs and pig factory farms. Yes. But yeah, I travel around to universities and classrooms and conferences and other events speaking.
That's amazing. I do have a couple of other photos here. And this, of course, is a cube of truth. And you are one of the outreach folks where some people hold. I've done that part. I haven't done the outreach part on a cube of truth, but as a vegan, I would, if any vegans out there haven't done cube of truth, it really is a wonderful thing to do, because you actually get to see the eyes of the person when they're watching the footage of the animals and how they're being treated and turned into food. I also have, I guess, some lectures that you've done. Want to announce this before we forget, jumping around a little bit, but you can become a city organizer. We forgot to mention that. So
yes,
there.
So check out the map, and we really encourage you to see if there's a march already going on in your area and help promote and attend or volunteer with that one. But if you're in an area where there isn't a march anywhere nearby, then you can fill out that form, and I'll talk with you about your capability for organizing and planning, and we'll figure out what makes sense, whether a march or a rally or some sort of outreach event sort of in solidarity. And we're trying to add more events to the map as much as possible.
Well, I'll certainly do everything I can to help you promote it or participate. I'll definitely be at the LA event that Paige Parsons Roach is going to be organizing. And this is all the ways that folks can get in touch with you personally. I wanted to show also your Patreon page, because I'm sure if you want to just speak on that for a moment before we move on.
Yeah, so I make, Instagram and YouTube content when I have the time, and speeches. Universities and classrooms and teachers don't always have the most money in the world to pay me to speak. So it is really appreciated when people can support me and help make my van and speaking tour and activism and the Vegan Earth Day March, all of that support is really appreciated. And I do want to mention that we have, for the Vegan Earth Day March specifically, and we're going to be talking about this a lot more soon, but we have a donor who has very generously offered to match donations directly to the Vegan Earth Day March, up to $20,000. And so we really need your grassroots support, because, we have marches all over the world, and we need to be able to help, people print signs and banners and outreach materials and all of these things. Please, we have a donate button on our website, and please help support that project.
Absolutely. You can go to the website again, veganearthdaymarch.org. And I just wanted to mention this banner here, where one of our viewers, not banner, but comment, one of our viewers asked people and reminded people to download the app. This video will be available, and you can share it out and let lots more people know about the event. As we all help out, it really spreads the word. Let's just read what Tina Walker wrote. Download Unchained TV app. It's free. Thousands of video recipes. That's true. And documentaries, music, protest, news. It's amazing, helping people go vegan and stay vegan. So we're all doing our part, and you can do your part. And if you don't know a lot about this, learn more. You can definitely check out the website, and also follow Serena on Born Vegan. Serena, is there anything else you want the audience to know before we have to say goodbye for now?
Yeah, just reach out to me if you are at all connected with whether it's a conference, an environmental event, or a university or a classroom, any venue where you have students or people, an audience, like please reach out to me. I would love to come speak if I can work it into my schedule where I'm traveling. Universities are one of my favorite places to speak because students are so open to this information. But yes, please send me an email at serena@bornvegan.org. I would love to hear from you or coordinate some kind of speaking or vegan educational event.
Yes, and also I want to mention that if you want to get more involved with Vegan Earth Day, the Facebook page is an excellent resource from what I've seen in my research. Also, climatehealers.org is a great place to go and check out information. And Serena, I had mentioned to you, I would love you to come on again before the Earth Day March, if we could work it out. And in any case, we'll definitely help promote this. Folks, you can download clips from this video, share it out, get people involved, let people know what's going on. Serena, thank you so much for being on today. We look forward to seeing you again. All my viewers out there, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.